In 1915, aircraft were being used for reconnaissance. But they soon got so good at it that both sides started to look for ways of stopping them getting their information. The first aerial dogfights began as both sides fought to control the sky. Balloons, which were also being used for spying on the enemy, were easy targets. But a fast-moving target like another aircraft was virtually impossible to hit with handheld weapons. It was machine guns that were needed. The Germans' Fokker Eindecker was the first aircraft specifically built to shoot down other aircraft. It was lethal because it had a fixed machine gun that fired forwards in time with the propeller. This meant that it could be flown by a single pilot. All the pilot had to do was point his aircraft at the enemy and pull the trigger. Over the Western Front, British pilots of the Royal Flying Corps were simply shot out of the sky.
Something had to be done very, very quickly to counteract the German effectiveness. And a number of new aircraft were therefore developed, which soon, slowly but surely, gained air superiority for the Allies. And that therefore became an end in its own right, because you cannot do what you want to do unless you have air superiority, because the enemy will prevent you from doing it.
They needed a fighting scout, which was fast and heavily armed as well as maneuverable. And so, by 1917, a new generation of aircraft began to enter the squadrons of the Royal Flying Corps. Of these, the Sopwith Camel was probably the most successful. Its small, tough airframe, coupled with a powerful rotary engine, made it fast and highly maneuverable. Its 2 machine guns made it the perfect killing machine. However, the Camel could be just as deadly to inexperienced pilots as to the enemy. Red Cross, Victoria Cross, or Wooden Cross was how many pilots described what the Camel was like to fly.
The Camel was regarded by the pilots of the time as being extremely sensitive, almost neurotically sensitive. It had slightly lopsided flying characteristics, and pilots either loved it or loathed it.
The German response was the Fokker triplane, an aircraft copied from a British design. Its airframe was even smaller than the Camel's, and its shorter wings made it extremely maneuverable. Dogfights began in earnest, with pilots locked in deadly duels, twisting and turning, often coming as close as 50 yards of one another as they tried to gain the best position for an attack. Pilots of both sides soon came to realize success depended on height and speed. Gradually, combat maneuvers that were consistently effective began to evolve and formed the basis of the first manuals of aerial fighting techniques, skills that are still taught to today's pilots of super fighters. After a pilot had shot down 5 aircraft, he was called an ace, and he was hailed as a hero by military commanders and the press alike, all desperate to bring a little glamour into a war which on the ground was literally bogged down in sodden trenches.